brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me. Ask the Paul, where we rise and don't fall.
Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome to my brain. Welcome to my frequency. Enter at your own risk. Now, today I have a special guest with me. He is a self-described deliberate HR professional, which is important. We'll talk about that later. He's a husband, father, a disobedient cat owner. He's also the VP of People and Culture at CEDA of Cook County, blogger, philosopher, teacher, and just an overall really interesting gentleman. Paul LaLonde, welcome to Baxter's Buzz, my friend.
Mr. Baxter, thank you so much. I can't wait to talk with you, and super excited that you asked me to be here.
Well, no, the pleasure's all mine, truly. And we connected at HR Unite this summer, sort of briefly. Shout out to Tina Marie and the HR Unite crew. But we didn't, you know how it is. It's like you're like, we'll be back. We're gonna make sure we connect, and we didn't. So we found time outside of that, which says that we both kind of prioritize it because we're both pretty busy. Had a great conversation. We talked about a number of things, but I wanted to have you on this first time just to talk about a lot of the speaking that you do is around the importance of networking, specifically for your HR folks that may or may not value it, right? So for myself, I'm in a consultative like sales role. I do a number of other things, but I enjoy people. I know people, I try to be a bridge between like amazing people and amazing experiences. And I can't do that without the people, right? Naturally extroverted, the whole nine. But I also know that it's important to just build bridges, and it's a lot of my job, but a lot of my personality. And I feel like for some of our professionals, not just our HR pros, but many folks, they feel like they're just too busy kind of doing their day-to-day stuff. How do you position the importance of networking, getting outside your cube, getting outside your desk, now getting outside of your home to make sure that you go out and connect with others?
Yeah, no, I think you mentioned that you're naturally extroverted. I'm naturally introverted. So I think networking and getting out with people is a little bit more of a hill that I have to climb. And it was something I didn't really fully realize until I actually met Eric Kershaw. And I think you are familiar with Eric.
Yeah.
He had me think differently because he gives this presentation called Networking Like an Introvert. And I first saw it 2 years ago, don't remember exactly when, but really got me thinking more about how to be more intentional about it and use introversion as a way to really go forward with a lot of how you network and where you're networking and how you think about it. In grad school and in college and all those times, during your professional courses, they really stress you got to network, you got to get to know people and all these things. And the old, I think, paradigm of going to the busy hors d'oeuvre room and just randomly going up and shaking people's hands and all that never appealed to me. But where it really started taking off was more on social network side of things. And I think it was a natural for an introvert to just be like, well, I'll send this person a quick message or connect with them or something. That's a little less threatening to me than just randomly going up to somebody. But as I did that and I started making friends online and colleagues online, it started to become more natural to actually just go up to folks and not care as much as I used to in the past. Now, it still drains you after a while as an introvert, because that's where I get my energy, is being alone. So a group of people kind of takes that out of me. But I enjoy it now. whereas in the past I never did. It's sort of like just accepting who you are and realizing, you know, don't look at it as I'm trying to get something from these folks. Look at it as, what can I provide these folks? And then that takes the impetus off of you a little bit. And it's just more at that time, who can I be friends with? You know, you're not going to be
Yeah.
friends with everybody. And even colleagues, it doesn't always work that way. But that was how I really, I think, trained myself to think of it differently and really start taking off from there.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've been pretty extroverted my entire life, but I haven't always had the confidence to go up to people and sort of introduce myself. Um, the example I always give is if we were at a party or an event and we were at the sitting at the table together, we'd have a great time. Okay. I'd be, yapping and cracking jokes the whole nine. But if they said, "Hey, that's Paul. You ought to know him. He's on the other side of that other room." I didn't have the confidence to go over to someone that didn't know me and say, "Hi, Paul. I'm Baxter Hall. I just wanted to come over and speak." I didn't. I was too insecure.
Sure. No, I can appreciate that. I think that plays a part of it. Being naturally shy myself, that's the last thing I ever truly want to do. But I think that's where the social networking, and you mentioned I give some presentations, and that's what my main presentation is about, is how HR professionals can use social networking to advance real life networking. So
Yeah.
the one example I always use, and it's my favorite, is Claire Petrie, who is a recruiting professional in Buffalo, New York. Hopefully her and everybody in Buffalo are all good, because the lake effect snow, being a Midwesterner in Chicago, I know lake effect snow very well. So stay safe, Buffalo. But I randomly connected with Claire on Twitter, like around 2017. She asked a question about networking or HRing or something like that, and I just answered. And that's all I did. I just wanted to give something back to somebody else. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. And she always brings that story up, that she remembers that to this day, about how I went on my way to help her at that particular time. So the following year, we were at a big HR conference in Chicago. And she reached out to me and randomly said, "Hey, let's meet up for some food." I was like, "Oh, okay." But if I saw her in a room and I knew who she was, I wouldn't have gone up to her, because that's just who I am. But since we already broached that on social network, in Twitter, it just made it like we were long lost friends, and it just made it super easy. And it's actually the same with Eric Kershat. Was we at that exact same conference, him and I met, but we never met before that in real life outside of LinkedIn at the time. And we didn't talk shop. We didn't talk his Harmony Insights, and he didn't talk about my work. We just talked about craft beer, because we're both big craft beer people. And we've remained friends and colleagues, and we've done collaborations ever since. So that's just kind of how I always, I think, position the power that this can be for a lot of HR folk.
I think that, and Tina Marie talks about it, and it happens all the time. People, you get bogged down. You have work to do. You have things you have going on, and you may not feel like you have the time or like the breathing room to get out and do some of these other things. Go to events, attend trainings, anything that isn't sort of mandated by the company, right? But then you need a job, right? You're looking for a job all of a sudden, and you're back. You're like, "Hey, everybody," and everybody's like, "Yo, where you been?" And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It only becomes a little annoying when that's the only time you're around. Now it's 2 years later, you found a job, you've disappeared. Now you're back again, going, yo. Yeah, okay, it's like, okay, this is getting a little stale. Okay, it's getting a little old. I think that personally, I didn't necessarily understand like the value that I like. It was like this fear that people would say, well, who are you? And why should I know you? Or something where I would be completely put on the spot, and maybe I wouldn't feel like I could articulate what I bring to the table. Why am I introducing myself to someone? And now a lot of it is based around just curiosity. And curiosity and the fact that I do have value. And whether somebody sees it or not is besides the point. I know what I bring to the table. I'm just generally interested in people. And that doesn't mean I'm delivering a sales pitch. It just means that I'm going to introduce myself and figure out where we go from there. But like genuine sort of curiosity. And that's what I lead with. And some people you're going to connect with a bit more strongly. Some folks, it's going to be a quick sort of high and by, and then you just got to go about your business, right?
Right. Now, you said something important there that I think we miss, not just in networking context, but I think just in life context, that we miss the boat on a lot. And that is deriving value from internal sources rather than value from external sources. Because at that point, you can never, ever control what other people think, do, etc. You can influence it, but you ultimately can't control their decisions. But you can always control your decisions. So if you decide to like yourself, if you decide to say, I bring value, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And it's an interesting thing from networking. There's a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He was a Roman emperor, and he wrote this book. But the interesting thing about the book is he didn't write it for anybody. They're actually his journals that he wrote to himself. And when he passed and died, someone, no one knows how they came to us, but someone found them and then was like, hey, this is great, and then published it. He never meant for any of that to be seen by anybody. So I kind of liked that a lot, in that, all right, when I blog or when I post something or when I'm out on social networks doing whatever it is I'm doing, first and foremost, I'm doing it for me. Do I like this? What am I trying to say? And it's therapeutic in some ways. So when I do those things, I'm writing it for me. And if somebody else somewhere finds value in it, that's just an added bonus. So that's kind of how I approach a lot of that stuff.
So I got to ask you this. So I haven't blogged in a while. I've kind of set up shop more so here in this podcast world, like video and audio.
Which is awesome. And I love them, by the way. Keep doing them.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It was called Baxter's. The blog is still around. It'll come back at some point once I get my act together in some form or fashion. But it was called Baxter's Buzz. So the podcast, didn't have to think much about the name for the podcast. It was always really therapeutic for me. This is over 15 years ago when I started the blog. I just didn't know how much to share. I used to feel like even if I was sharing my frustrations, if I wasn't at the point where I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, I didn't want to share it with anyone, because I didn't want them to be like venting sessions. I felt like if I can't button this up and put a nice, like, pretty bow on it at the end, I just didn't want to share it because it felt like complaining to me. Tell me about the blog and sort of the content around it, and then how much do you share, like, personally when you're blogging?
Yeah, no, that's That's an interesting take, and I can relate to a lot of that. I don't know if it's just me and my personality is I'm not a natural converser, talker. It takes a lot to get out. Now, I don't know if that's introversion or if that's just personality. Maybe it's all of it. But I've always been much more of a communicator through my writing. So what I haven't always been able to necessarily say more personal things verbally, but I've been able to say more personal things through the written word a little bit more easily. That's horrible English, maybe, but no, actually,
I think
whatever.
that works. Yeah.
Actually, it works well enough. So when I first started blogging, it was just general, okay, HR stuff, and I didn't really know where I was going with it. It was HR Philosopher, just think differently, but as it's sort of evolved and matured over time, I've taken heavier concepts, and I think that's why it takes me a while to write, because it's not just there's an issue and then I talk about it. I try and weave in all these very heavy things. So one thing I did end up writing about personally that it's still hard for me to talk about, but it's out there, people can find it on the blog, is how mental health and a lot of my own personal mental health challenges and getting over the hump with a lot of that and what I did and coming to terms with a lot of it. So the blog has helped me with that. And people have reached out and said, thank you for posting that. People I didn't know or met. So that felt good.
That's
Again,
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote it for me again
Yeah.
at the end of the day, just to be therapeutic, to get it out because I had to, because I couldn't verbalize it. But it did end up helping somebody else. So that was the positive. I've done other things too, like social justice and Black Lives Matters and how HR can work with a lot of that stuff. That's harder for me to talk about just because I'm naturally adverse to those type of conversations, but I know I have to have them and HR needs to have them. So I've written about that as well. And I think just toxic workplaces that I've been at, I didn't want to necessarily talk about them, but I wrote about them. So I can, again, circling back to what you had brought about, it's easier for me to write it down than to verbalize it, but to come to terms with it.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. What's the name? Say the name of the blog again.
It's HR Philosopher, and it's easy, hrphilosopher.com.
Yeah. hrphilosopher.com. Now, you consider yourself a philosopher. I feel like we could spend a lot of time philosophizing, you and I specifically, right? I think the couple of conversations we've had, I think we have, it's curious, it starts with curiosity, I would say, right? And then I think that there's, I have friends that have a lot of answers. They're very sure about things, right? And many times I don't have as strong of a stance on some of this stuff. I feel like I have more questions. It's like I have more questions before I even come to some sort of conclusion. I don't even know if I want to come to a conclusion. I just need more clarity, right? Talk about your, like, how do you look at like philosophy in the HR world, but just in general, and sort of what kind of things do you spend your time sort of mulling over?
That's a loaded question, but no, I can appreciate how Socratic you are. Socrates said the only thing he was 100% sure of was that he didn't know anything, which I thought was pretty interesting. But I think people have a bad rap, or philosophy has a bad rap, or people think, I think, not as we could about philosophy. What comes to mind maybe is, very intellectual folks in ivory towers big bushy beards talking about how many angels can fit on the pinhead of a needle, or do we live in a computer simulation? What do we know is really real, and all these deep questions.
Yeah.
Which is maybe a part of it, but to me, true philosophy is really just going back to what you said. It's, are you curious? Are you thinking? Are you trying to develop your way of coming to answers to problems? And I'm not talking about how many angels are on the pinhead of a needle, those type of problems. I'm talking about, you have a sexual harassment complaint. That's a big problem. How did you develop your thinking? How did you develop your line of processing to solve that issue? That is philosophy. True philosophy to me is just the day-to-day stuff that everybody is doing, and how you are solving those problems through your logic, through your reasoning, and through the way that you are thinking about things. Now, particularly, I spend a lot of time reading and studying Stoicism, and actually a lot of Eastern philosophy too, like Taoism, Buddhism. Buddhism's quasi philosophy, religion philosophy, but so those are the ones that really interest me. I've been trying to spread out a little bit more, just trying to study different ways of schools, and like nihilism to me is incredibly interesting. I don't necessarily know if I'm not a nihilist and nothing matters and all these type of things, but it is interesting to study that and to see where Friedrich Nietzsche came up with a lot of his stuff. But and also for anybody that likes adult cartoons, Rick and Morty, it's just hysterical and fascinating because it's just based on nihilism. But so
I never knew that. Okay.
Yeah, that's how I kind of go about a lot of stuff. And it's like just trying to think differently as much as I can, and having that intellectual curiosity and even just regular curiosity, like you said.
I think that you're definitely onto something. The philosophy piece gets a bad rep because partly because people don't think that anything's getting done, right?
Right, yeah.
Everyone's standing around looking at this light bulb that needs to be changed, right? And
yeah, does the light bulb exist versus, well, the light bulb does exist in this reality right now. It has to be changed. How do you go about changing the light bulb rather than trying to figure out if it exists or those type of things?
Right. And I think that when you can, a lot of things are kind of staring us in the face. We may not have the words for it, or there may be it may not be a popular opinion. And so we may not be as encouraged or quick to sort of share what we see. But some things are just kind of right there. And it's like, has anyone ever noticed this? But when you compare the philosophy piece with the execution piece, I think you got a really good grasp of things. You're not spending your time just mulling over things, but you're actually saying, okay, how do I resolve these problems? And I think that's the difference. And it sounds like you've kind of figured that piece out and understand the parts of the other side of that coin. Now, you have your blog, you are have these presentations, you are firing up the HR community, telling people to get out there, be more connected, right? But you also have a really cool project upcoming. You want to talk about that writing project?
You're right. And I think to bring it full circle and connect all the dots, this project would not exist without my having planted the seeds in social media many years ago. You talk about, people only going on and networking when they need a job. I thankfully never took that route. I was always, hey, I'm just networking because I think it's cool and it's the right thing to do. And I want to learn from folks and all that. So it opens up all these opportunities down the line, right? Like the old Chinese proverb is, if you want to sit under a tree, you have to plant the seeds, now versus 20 years from now, right? So what one of those opportunities that came about is to work with a group called Influence Media Network, and they help publishers in writing books, and they have a book series called something Fusion. So one was Sales Fusion. It was a chapter for a contributing chapter by many authors on how to up your sales game. There's Manager Fusion, and I'm part of the cohort for People Fusion. So I will be a published author, which has always been a bucket list of mine. I thought it was a great opportunity. They reached out to me. I didn't know they existed or any of those things, but they saw stuff I was doing online. The CEO of the company reached out to me and said, "We have this project. You want to be a part of it?" I was like, "Yes." So I will be a published author, and my topic is going to be about HR and philosophy and how it can help you become a better people manager and just a better HR practitioner. So I'm super excited about it. Some of my our HR network and friends like Christy Angler, Mike Sipple, they're going to be in it too. So that's just an added bonus to me that I get to be in a book with these awesome HR folks and good friends.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's amazing. And again, you plant seeds, right? And then you just never know when they're going to bear fruit. And so that's the important piece of just doing right, helping people. And next thing you know, there's some really cool fruit on that tree that you hadn't even, planned for or anticipated. So kudos to you, Paul. I want to say, so I'm in an employee benefits world. I've worked with HR. The biggest reason that I'm in the field that I'm in is because I've worked with HR for so long. And it's like, in another word, I'm supposed to be an HR professional. So I love my HR folks. I'm fascinated by the work that you all do. And when it's done right, in my opinion, there is a mix of the people part, but then there's also the execution piece that we talked about, right? That it can't just be all come in my office, tell me about what's going on. It has to be, how do we provide some solutions? How can we help you get to where you're trying to go? And it feels like you understand that, have a really good grasp of that. And so thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing some of your experiences. I would love to have you back to talk a bit more about some books that you may be reading, maybe some stuff that's upcoming for you. But this is another great conversation. He is a deliberate HR professional, blogger, philosopher, teacher. We didn't get to the disobedient cat owner, but I think that kind of goes without saying. That's another story for another time. Paul, LaLonde, thank you so much for being on Baxter's Buzz. I appreciate you, friend.
Right back at you, sir. Again, thank you for having me. Great conversation. I could talk to you for hours. So we'll do it.
Thank you. I just want to let everybody know who's watching or listening that you are all worthy. You just can't be afraid to find and embrace your own frequency. So until next time, peace.
Welcome into his brain, welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk, come be at peace with me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, please subscribe, share, and also hit that notification button as well. Thank you so much.
Financial literacy to authentic